When was the moment you realized like you actually had ADHD?
Going through school, it just did not feel like it clicked. I wanted to go to school to be creative and do these things, and I think once I started to go on my own, I got to kind of experience some of that. I didn't have a problem with learning, I just had a problem with focusing on things that I just didn't find interesting.
What's been your biggest lesson that you learned on your own?
I would say...
My name's Jacob Spellis with Beyond the Label podcast. I'm so excited. We got a young entrepreneur, Mr. Josh Coven, and I was just thinking here, I would imagine you watch other films, like they just did it wrong, They just shot something the wrong way. I would have done this, but I was wondering, what's your favorite movie?
The one that comes to mind, it's fresh on the top of my mind because our editor just put a poster up, but I did really enjoy The Dark Knight. But all of the Marvel series up through No Way Home, like if I could have all of those be my favorite movies, they're all good, But I would say probably Endgame, Avengers Endgame. That was probably one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, you would hate me. I don't know. I haven't watched any of those movies. I'm the worst with movies. I always my ADHD would never let me watch like a full.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's the beginning, middle, end?
Let's just get through it. Yeah.
I think and one cool thing I think the whole world is like content. When you think about even like the Bible, movies, schoolwork. The more I think about it, it's like. Just good content, how are schools more engaging? How is social media more engaging? As easy as putting a light up makes a difference, What do you think is, one of the most challenging things about putting out good work for the people you work with?
I think one of the early challenges that we run into is the people that we work with often, the problem we solve is if anybody could do what we're doing. We're one thing I think and what we hear, one of our clients told us that she's super bubbly when you get to know her, but in terms of content online, she would never want to post.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that we've been told we do well is we help bring that out online, and they're like, wow, I never thought it was going to be this easy. And I struggle with this too, posting my own content. So I think the struggle early on is that people just are so nervous about what other people think of them that they don't want to put themselves out, and so they end up running into that barrier. But then when they partner with us, they're like, well, now I've got money in it and I've got a team, and when we start posting, they're like, actually, this isn't that bad.
Man.
Like your last episode, you had Nicole on, and every time we work with her, she's like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be good. And she crushes it.
Kills it.
Every time. And so I think that's probably the most common thing we run into early on is when people are starting to get on camera, they have this idea of what that means. And I think people joke around, they're like, I don't want to do TikTok dances. And it's like, no, you don't need to.
Yeah.
Just be you. The camera just happens to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and I love it, and I jumped right into it. But I know I love your company name since I've seen it, as we scale, because it sets the premises like we're going to work together. I think a lot of people, I would imagine, pay you some money and they're like, I need a viral video, but they don't even know what to do with a viral video. They can't sell stuff. They don't know how to set up the account. But when you think about the business name, a lot of people just think, well, I'll just start an LLC. It's just a name, What is your mission and vision behind As We Scale?
Yeah, one of the things you said there, I think I'm an overthinker when it comes to the small details. So, it took a while to land on that. But, I remember having coffee with Cameron in a coffee shop and we were talking about it. And we just saw that one in the list of names. And we're like, you know what? Like, it just kind of resonated with us. And so part of As We Scale is we're not, perfect in everything we do. We're building in public. Right. Yep. So we're learning in some cases as we go. Social media is changing. AI comes in and it changes algorithm, changes content, all these things. So we're building in public. So part of As We Scale is also true to us. As we scale the company, as we're scaling, we're learning, we're growing, we're adapting, we're bringing on new people that help us to take it to the next level. So part of the scaling for us is as we scale to us, I think. The important piece is we want to help people enter the digital world in a way that maybe they haven't done before that stays authentic to them. So if we're working with you, it's authentic to you. We're not putting you in a bucket of like, hey, do these things. Like, sure, there's frameworks that help the process go, but I'm asking you questions about the things you're passionate about because people can feel passion. They feel realness and authenticity. And I'm so thankful for this. Authenticity and storytelling is on a pendulum swing. It used to be like, oh no, we want fast cuts, this, that, and that, whatever. We got to have the hook, this, that. That's all still important. But if you're forcing you into a bucket, then it's not really you anymore. And then people are like, cool, like you said, I get 1 million views. But if I get 1 million views and it doesn't lead to partnerships or business or sales of the products, then what's the point? It's just a vanity metric. It's just like, hey, look at me, I got 1 million views. And it's like, cool, but what did you do with it? What impact did you have?
Yeah. I think about one time somebody hacked my like Facebook account, and at first I was like, yeah, who cares? I'll start another one, But then I really thought, like, there's pictures of my kids, like it's a digital footprint, and then you can even pass on to family members and start thinking like, what time in history could, you hear all these stories about your grandpa or grandmother, but you couldn't see anything. You might just have some old ass picture where they didn't smile. Men were tough back then, a lot of testosterone. They're just like farmers, no smile. But now you can literally see somebody's history, like even my kids have so many photos that are there forever. So, I think it's more important, even if it's not a business or anything like that. Like, there's a lot of bad talk about social media and stuff, but I think there's a lot of good connecting. There's people in countries that never had access to anything. How do you stay grounded with there's negative effects of social media and videos and stuff, but you literally got to watch it all day, every day. How do you stay positive, or maybe even like a self-care approach?
Sure. I'd be the first to admit I'm not even perfect at that, and I struggle with that sometimes. I like to say social media is a double-edged sword, right? Yeah. On the negative side, it's the devil. You get lost in all of the black hole of all the different content, and all it's basically doing is giving you these dopamine kicks, and there's way more experts out there that will talk in detail about what that can do to you. I think everybody knows that. The positive side is you can reach people in a way that we would have never been able to do as we were growing up. And like 50 years ago, you know what I mean? Like, the communication was totally different. So one of my also personal goals is to replace some of the AI slop and all of this other, crap that you see with positive things. Which, so again, back to as we scale, we're partnering with people that match our standard and intuition of what integrity looks like, what moral looks like, because we want to replace the things that go in the feed with positive, with impact. But in terms of me scrolling through and learning what's working, I think one of the things nowadays that is a little bit easier than it used to be is what you search for. If you search for, let's say, for instance, I like Gary Vee, I like Alex Ramosi. If I search for that and start to interact with it, my feed will become more business oriented and things like that. So you can actually change your feed so you're not getting crap.
Wow.
So that's one tip or one trick that I would do is if you're getting a bunch of crap, it's because at some point either you searched something or you interacted with something you maybe shouldn't have, and now you're getting it. Not every platform's perfect, but like the main ones that people scroll through, that's one way you can kind of hack the system so that it's only showing you things that are positive instead of just like a bunch of, crap that's not going to add any value to you.
That's funny too, because I think a lot of times, like I, use YouTube to learn stuff, and I think you could get good insight. Sometimes my kids mess it up, the stuff they look up, but like look at their top 50 searches on YouTube, like somebody starting a business, and you probably have this all the time. People ask you a bunch of questions, and you think to yourself, like, you're not even Googling this stuff. You should be locked in. I think it's so important. When was the first time you picked up a camera? I remember one time I tried to edit my video, and I almost threw my computer across the living room. Like, it was terrible. I got to there, and then I erased the whole thing. But how did you pick a camera up, and what enticed you to build a career out of this?
I think it was either my mom or dad had like those JVC cameras with like the big tapes that you can put in the things way back when.
You're that old? Okay.
Yeah, so they were doing like home videos back in the original days. Like, you remember AFV, America's Funniest Videos? You remember that channel? Yeah. So like that was big growing up. We were watching that. I think that we were filming stuff, and man, I hope now that I'm talking about it, I hope I can go back and kind of see if that footage still exists. Could that'd be cool just to see. But the earliest memory I can remember is wanting this kind of camera. They used to be popular. I don't know if you remember. They had like a button you could press and like the USB would flip out, and they were like flip videos, and they were like kind of like, they almost look like a phone. But I'll have to show you a picture later. But I remember taking that, and you could like press and record a video, and you could pretty much connect that camera right to the computer and start to work with it. And so I don't know, I got super interested in the storytelling components. Like you said, when I watch movies, I feel like because I can recognize the patterns, I probably annoy the crap out of anyone I watch, like especially my wife, because I'm like, this is about to happen, and then it happens. She's like, shut up. She never does that, or she never tells me to shut up. But so I think I just was always passionate about that, and like, so I would just create like little fun, films with like Legos and stuff like that, and then got connected with I worked at this church for a little bit, but when I was like 14 maybe, this guy was like, hey, I was watching him switch on this crazy board with like 1,000,000 buttons, and he's like, you want to give it a try? And I was like, yeah. And then I started doing it, and I think that really lit a fire to make it like a career.
Wow. Yeah, I think, a lot of times people think you just have to be passionate about something, and then the world will just fall in place for you. But a lot of times you got to learn the business aspect, especially in marketing, not in a mean way. Like sometimes, I remember me, you, and some other people, Nicole, were having a meeting, and they were talking about brand and stuff. And I think after 20 minutes, I was like, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know the brand. I don't know where I'm going, but marketing people have such a different mindset, and sometimes don't see the business aspect of it. Some people are really good, but what drove you to start your own company?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it could be any number of things. I remember watching a Gary Vee video really, really, really early on, and it was one of these videos where he's like talking about like, if you're in your 20s, just go and like do it. And I remember that video, like he basically was like, quit. Now's the best time to do it. Like this is the best time to experiment. Worst case scenario, it all goes to crap, and you can just go back and get a job. So I think I got a taste of that kind of energy. But I mean, talking about beyond the label, one of the things, and you mentioned ADHD multiple times, one of the things growing up that I struggled with was ADHD. And it's now very popular, and I think it's popular because back when we were younger, I think we're about the same age, they were just diagnosing people with ADHD left, right, and center, and they were given medication, like I think, not Excedrin, but I don't know. They were just given medication, Adderall now is big or whatever. And so I think for me, it was always hard to focus on like class and school and all these different things. And to tie that back into your question of why leap to start your own company, I think I've always, like every job I worked in, after about 1 to 2 years, I would get complacent. Wow. And I'd be like, all right, cool. What's the next position for me to learn? How do I grow? I mean, one of the first jobs I had one of the best leaders of all time, shout out Rod, and he taught me what leadership meant. But he basically molded me, and once I learned one position, I'm like, cool, what's next? And then I worked my way up to be a general manager of a Chipotle, and so that kind of started my interest of like, cool, I just want to learn, I want to grow, I want to learn. And what I realized in the last position I had, I got to the highest level of marketing you can get to in a company, and a chief marketing officer, and I realized it wasn't filling a hole that's been in my life for years and years probably. And I think that's the entrepreneurship where you like doing all these different things. And so last year or just over a year ago, I decided to take a bet on myself, not having it all figured out, and just do, what I have been doing, but for myself, and do it the way that I think it should be done from a leadership standpoint, internally and externally. And we've been blessed. We've been super blessed. Cameron's behind the scenes here. It's awesome to have him, and we have another person. So, I mean, that's what drove me, is I always felt like I was reaching a ceiling and nobody was pouring into me. I was like, maybe I just am yearning for something more. And so far there's not been a day where I haven't been grateful or bored. You know what I mean? I'm like, you know what I mean? There are some times where I'm like, man, I wish this would slow down a little bit, but it's been great. Yeah, it's been cool.
Yeah, I think there's so many obstacles. I always kind of look, I don't know about you. Do you organize your emails and stuff? You probably got a bunch of files and stuff.
That's one area I definitely could get better at.
I just realized, I'm not even lying. So I've been, in the business space for a while, but I just created like my first folder. I just organized like the LLCs and stuff, and everybody around me was impressed. Like it was impressed. I didn't even know you could like on Gmail they have those labels on the side.
Yeah.
Like one time I screenshot a picture and somebody's like, Jake, how do you have hundreds of thousands of emails? I'm like, you delete them and stuff? They're like organized and they got them star and stuff. I honor those people. And I feel bad for my team sometimes because I'm just going 100 miles per hour. I got 50 browsers up.
And you can automate it too to have it automatically go into those folders depending on who it comes from.
Damn it, teach me that.
I got you.
Yeah, because I'm, everybody says AI, but they're really just asking ChatGPT questions, I feel like. And
there are AI that can kind of respond and do those things, but I have not delved into that, but there are super easy ways built into like email where like if you get an email about business or about taxes or receipts, it'll automatically put itself into the folder it needs to go to. So I do have mine organized that way, but to me that's just the bare.
Yeah.
Compared to like some people I've seen, like, one of the guys that works in the office that we share, like he only has 2 unread emails. I'm like, bro, I'm not even close to that.
It's impressive. Yeah. I know. It'd be embarrassing, but I don't care. But one thing I think about, especially going back to ADHD, like you said, I think there's, me being a social worker, I'm probably a little biased in some areas because I feel like sometimes I don't tell people the criteria because then they're trying to get medication. That's normally my first sign. They're like, I need meds. I'm like, slow down, But, especially as a therapist, like if you get diagnosed as an adult, normally they want to see you as a kid, right? So if you're a kid, one thing we do is you got to see how many environment is going on. So, for example, a boy's acting up. In school, teacher says they need ADHD help or assistance or whatever, but the problem's only at the school and not in the community or home, then there's probably some behavior modifications to do at school. Maybe they just don't like the school. Maybe they have a learning disability, but you're right, it's easy to get that diagnosis. And again, they're just diagnoses. What you do afterwards, like New Year's happened, what's today's date, the 20-something, whatever. How many people already quit Planet Fitness, because they didn't do that workout, diet, and they didn't create an entire new lifestyle, and that's what's needed sometimes. So sometimes with ADHD, you go there first, but there's scales like the Vanderbilt where the teacher fills out, the parent fills out, but it should be happening at school, home, and where you see it there, and sometimes we give kids just medicine. My place is a little different. We deal with more severe cases. We don't have a lot of just, community kids that just need a little help. We deal more severe. So a lot of times with untreated ADHD, our kids might be violent. So without sometimes medication, they're just hitting people and they're like, I don't know what the hell I just did. I'm like, you can see in their face too, because we have violent kids, they'll punch and they meant it and they mean it and they'll do it again. But then we have kids, they'll just punch and like, oh my God, I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
And then the other weird thing, like, in females, I don't see it too much. A lot of times their ADHD comes out as anxiety, so they're treated from an anxiety approach, whereas boys, are hyperactive anyway. So the male, and sorry I'm going on, but the male and the female, typically about up to 3rd grade don't even catch up mentally. So the way we teach boys, to me, doesn't really make sense because a lot of our boys are in the construction field. They're in STEM programs. They need to be doing stuff, whereas, they're sitting in classrooms and we kind of expect them to do this, but even the approach we take with ADHD is different, And then the other part is hereditary and then actually trauma related. So the way that something happens is our brain responds to the event. So let's say some trauma occurs and our brain learns a self mechanism that we respond to certain stuff quick. It might be, maybe mom and dad yelled too much. So anytime we get excited, we have to move. Our brain is constantly going. That's how we feel comfortable. For you, when was the moment you realized like you actually had ADHD? Did you always believe it, or you're like, no, I got this shit?
Retroactively, I could probably pick sometimes, like now looking back at my past. I mean, like one of the schools I went to, like in kindergarten, like, and I won't throw in the name of the school, but I remember like having to stand in a corner because I wasn't raising my hand to speak too many times because I would get excited. And so, I mean, that could probably be one of the earliest signs that I, could have been diagnosed with ADHD. Honestly, I feel like one of the things that going through school, like more the older I was, maybe like middle school, high school, even like early when I went to college before I dropped out, I was like, it just did not feel like it clicked. Like everybody else going to school, do their grades, but and I wanted to go to school to be creative and do these things. And then I think once I started to go on my own, I got to kind of experience some of that. But I just realized I didn't have a problem with learning. I just had a problem with focusing on things that I just didn't find interesting, right? So like English, or just these basic things, or like memorizing dates of like history points. Like like nowadays I find history very interesting. Back in like high school and stuff, I was like, oh, cool, like who the 27th president is this. I was like, bro, now you could just go, hey Siri, what's the, you know what I mean? Right. So for me, I was like, this just feels pointless. I don't feel like I'm learning a skill by just memorizing these things, and I'm sure my memory is not that great, so it would be nice to have that on a different note. But I think one thing I learned within the last 10 years is that I don't have a problem with learning as a whole. It's just I get fixated on the things I'm passionate about. And so how can I use that as a way to be an advantage versus like, oh man, I guess I'm just dumb, or ADHD, I can't I can't go to school, can't get 4.0, do all these things that other people can do. It's like, no, like I can recognize patterns in ways that not everybody else can recognize, and I can take complex topics in areas I'm passionate about and break them down, because I come from a family of teachers. I give credit to them. And I can break that down in a simple way and be like, hey, this is this, and I can see people like, oh, that makes sense. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm not like dumb. I just have to aim my power of learning towards the things that I'm passionate about. So I think that's when I really recognize that like ADHD is not necessarily like a diagnosis of like a death sentence of like you're just never going to be able to do things the way a normal people can do it. It's like entrepreneurship is like almost every entrepreneur has some sort of like ADHD-like symptom where they're just like all over the place always. Yeah. So I feel like even recently I've started to feel like I'm with my own people. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, even, if you look at history, when they said, the world is round, they killed them, So back then they're like, oh, shoot, But when you think about history, the purpose is like so you don't repeat itself in some way. So, studying the exact dates, I feel like they teach you to memorize stuff. We live in a generation that just, I remember being in college, we had a professor, he's like, yeah, you guys are screwed. And he's like, yeah, you got to pay for my books, I'm retiring, and then you study stuff on note cards, and you don't learn nothing, but it was true, like you're just memorizing stuff, whereas we take somebody who's interesting, like I went to Washington, D.C., maybe last year or something like that, and like I got to stay in the hotel where Martin Luther King Jr. wrote "I Had a Dream" speech. Oh, that's cool. And then every president got to stay there, and like even before, like the night before, because the security was crazy there. Like I was like, this don't seem real, and I was like, and the day before, President Trump and President Biden had like the famous meeting, like right before they took over, or whatever, and they were there the night before. Oh wow! And I could feel it like. There. Then I went to a spot where Martin Luther King gave the speech, and I felt there. Then I went to see Abraham Lincoln and his speech, So it's like I got to really learn.
It was immersive.
Yeah. No. See, that's a smart word, So I'm thinking like, taking kids and actually learning the history, but then learning from the history, Like we haven't even had good toilet paper for like 50 years.
It's crazy. Do you feel like one of the things I feel like I noticed is when I was younger, asking why was like frowned upon, like because I said so. Yeah. And I am interested about history, but I go back to history. I'm like, why did this happen? You know what I mean? So like, and I think part of the reason we found, the success we found, though it be, small in the grand scale of things, I think is because I just stay curious and I just want to learn and grow and develop. And back then, I feel like that wasn't the way I was supposed to learn. Whereas now, I'm like, I feel like I learn way more because I'm asking more open-ended questions. Like, when we have our sessions, I'm asking like, okay, this is interesting. Tell me more about this. Why is it this way? And I feel like that's one thing. I don't know if that's changed because I don't have kids myself, but I would hope, that people encourage the questioning, like, especially I'm sure in your programs you do of like, ask questions. That's how you learn versus just like, no, this is just the way it is. It's the way it's always been. And you can't ask why.
Yeah, well, in my job, they think that state insurance covers every single thing in the world, so they feel entitled to shit. I was joking. But, even my kid the other day, my son, he started like kind of tearing up, but he asked a question like it was somewhere around the lines, is the Bible real? And I said, well, look, I said, those are great questions, because if you read these stories, and you haven't seen that happen in your lifetime, it's kind of hard to believe. Yeah. Like, Dad can't go to a, Maumee Bay up the street and just split stuff in half. That would, I'd probably get admitted to the psych ward. You know what I mean? But he was questioning the hell out of me, and I was encouraging my wife, and we were like, no, keep going. I said that's the beauty, and we talked about the spirit and everything.
That's awesome.
Jesus and all that stuff. And he started crying. He's like, I'm sorry, I feel so bad. I'm challenged. And I said, no, the fact that you feel bad is you're developing a greater cause to build a relationship with God. Keep going, because a lot of people just kind of ignore it. And they might be like, yeah, I believe in God, but there might be a disconnection between you and God because you fully don't believe because
you're just taking your parents' belief or your guardian's belief. Yeah, I mean, I've had my own.
Of course.
Again, you know what I mean? Like being told you can't ask why and then be like, rebelling. I think every kid does that. But no.
And everybody has their own facts, especially now going back to like social media, whatever you search. And, it's kind of a scary world. My son was saying some stats and I'm like, okay, what scientist said this on YouTube, and explaining. Right. So you even got to monitor the information your kids are watching. But I totally agree, like questioning why. I think ADHD can be a curse, but it's really like a blessing because when I talk to other people that are like, how's your mind work like that? Or I can just spit out a bunch of stuff, or like, in entrepreneurship, in my business, like I have like business emergencies, but then I have emergencies with patients that I don't speak about too much, and we might be dealing with something, even, last night dealing with something till 11 o'clock at night, trying to make the best moves. And, I generally feel like, it's an honor, but it's also very hard to have people's life in our hands. Mm-hmm. But questioning everything that comes from the ADHD, we don't really aspire to that. So how did you overcome maybe like a label? Did you get in trouble in school where you called the ADHD kid? And then I can't imagine having teachers like that's got to, as parents.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I got asked this on a podcast like last year, like what would you be arrested for? And I was like, well, if you asked me when I was in school, they're like, oh, Coven would never get in trouble for any of this stuff. And I was like, I was bad. Yeah, dude, I was not a traditionally norm kid. No. Like, yeah,
you're like a pastor kid.
I was getting in trouble all the time, man. And I mean, part of it was probably that. Part of it just was not knowing, the right ways to cope with it, and not having, resources like. I don't know, who knows what would have existed back then. I doubt there would have been like a Vital Health Kids like you guys have now back then. But I mean, overcoming it, I think, honestly, I think the biggest life-changing, aside from me recently jumping into my own thing, one of the biggest moments for me was moving to Florida. There was a group of people that were starting a church plant down there. And I was like, all my friends are going that I connected with here. I'm like, I want to go. And they're like, pray about it. And I was like 18. They're like, hold on. You're in school, do your thing. And then ultimately, long story short, I basically said they were looking at 3 locations. And I had a relative in one of the locations. I said, if you go to that one, then I'll go. And they went to that one. And so then I moved there with just those people, none of my family. And so me moving there for 3 years on my own, I think really got me believe it or not, I'm very introverted. I'm more of a thinker and a processor than I am a social person. Anything you see now of me being social is because I moved out on my own and I was forced to get out of my shell. Yeah. And so when you talk about overcoming that, I think that was a big part of it. You know, having people surround me, and basically I got to experiment and reinvent myself and try that. And I would encourage anyone that if they get the opportunity to like move away somewhere if possible, and like even if it's just for a couple of years, that was huge for me, and it allowed me to kind of really figure out who I was, not just like from a creative standpoint, but what I cared about, what I valued, who I wanted to be in my life, who I didn't. You know, when I left, you know, the groups I was in, like there were some good people, but there were also some bad people, and I could have went a totally different route if I stayed here and been trapped in that. So I think that was probably arguably even more impactful than me leaving my steady job to do this. That was probably more of a leap.
Did you go to college?
I did. I went for about a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congrats. And then you,
So in my field personally, I think that there are definitely reasons to go to school. My field, the teachers, as nice and great as they were, they had not been in the field for years. So I'm learning from somebody who's teaching me outdated stuff, and in our field it grows. You know what I mean? There could be like right now it's social media. There could be a totally different thing that develops, and the school system doesn't adapt fast enough. At least traditional school, from my experience, doesn't adapt fast enough to teach you. I mean, we talked about this in some meetings of like, I kind of want to develop more of like a alternative to school where we're staying in tune with stuff, you know what I mean, as it develops. So I recognized pretty quickly, like, what I'm getting taught, I'm learning more in the field than I'm learning from these professors. I was ahead of all of the things they were teaching because of my experience with some of like the like there's a church that I was a part of, and the people that were there were teaching me things that were like senior level stuff. You know what I mean? So I recognized pretty quickly, like, hey, this isn't where I'm currently enrolled doesn't make sense. It makes more sense to jump in the field.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of people are just motivated anyways, you know, so they would have been successful regardless they went to college or not. You know, I mean, obviously, if you're going to be a surgeon, you can't just...
Engineer,
you can't just start operating on people. Sure. That would be in trouble, you know.
Medical malpractice.
Yeah, one time I had a family member who's like, man, I'm about to become a lawyer. I said, that's great, but when you owe the courts $30,000, that's going to look terrible in front of the board, and then to get the GED first, you know. So, I mean, some stuff you gotta
and then you got 8 more years from there, buddy.
Yeah, you know.
That's crazy.
You know, yeah. One time I was working at the hospital, and like, Jake, you should become a psychiatrist. And I was like, I don't even think I could spell lithium, you know. We'd be in trouble, you know. But knowing your own strength, that'd be cool if I got a sponsor from like a mental health medication.
That would be cool.
Know.
Yeah.
Today brought to you by Prozac, you know. That'd be kind of cool, you know. But I think about that in life experience. What molded you to become an entrepreneur? Like, you got the idea, it was cool, you're keeping it going, love the concept, but what molded you to take this role?
I think so. I like to call them my digital mentors. So I like to read. Like I said, I wasn't a big reader when I was growing up, but I like to read about this field, like entrepreneurship, about marketing. And so, Gary Vee, Dan Martell, Alex Hormozy, Tony Robbins, all these people. I think the more I read and the more I related to that, more than I related to where I was like, these are my people, but this is like what I've been taught for 30 years of my life, this is what I need to do. Go to school, go to college, get a 9 to 5, get a 401k, retire, that's your life. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It just did not ever feel like it resonated with me. So as I'm like learning from these guys, as I'm reading or watching their content, I'm like, this makes so much sense. I need more of this. And so that's how I continue to mold myself now. Is for instance, I'll give credit to you. Like, I try to put myself in positions where there are people that are ahead of where I'm at and have lives that model things that I would like. And I try to find mentors, both, in person, but also I read from people that I aspire to. And that's kind of how I mold myself now. You know what I mean? Just trying to continue I never want to stop. You know what I mean? I always want to keep learning, keep growing, because I know that I have so much to learn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, success leaves clues. You know,
Yeah.
What's been your biggest lesson that you learned, on your own?
I would say it sounds cliche, but a lot of people that get into entrepreneurship say like it's harder than it looks.
Yep.
And I would say that's true, but in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like the parts that I thought they were talking about would be hard, it felt super easy.
Yep.
But other parts, bringing people on, learning the others, like you said, there's so much about the business that you need to know, not just what you do well, but you have to know all of the, the HR components, the legality components, bringing other people on and scaling that and hiring people, training them, which I've done components of these in different roles in my life, but all of it together, I think learning that, growing and trying to continue to stay like humble in that process,
Mm-hmm.
I think has been challenging but rewarding. Like not trying to pretend like I have it all figured out, being honest, with my team and just like, hey, I'm scaling too. We're scaling together, and I want to bring, like-minded people both internally and externally together. And so, I mean, it's been tough. I mean, especially early on, like trying to figure it out when you don't have money and like you're like, oh, cool. The business is 6 figures, but you're taking home not even a fraction of that. Yep. You know what I mean? I think people talk about that, but to really actually experience it is a different thing. They're like, oh yeah, the business is doing well. You must be making a lot of money. It's like, no, I'm reinvesting it. Yeah. I mean, rather than keep it to myself, I'm bringing other people on. And then, so I think that part was a little bit more challenging than I thought it would be. But, it's been good. I think it's been good character development for me,
Yeah. No, I had a mentor named Greg Walker. He owned a lot of businesses, retired. He's a really good guy. And he told me so. He's like, I had a friend and myself, he's like, I would sleep, in a locked drawer with bread. They sell food and stuff. I was like, that's silly. And like counting every penny. And he's like, no, he had a $4 million business and he hated it, And I remember at that time, I was like, that sounds stupid. How are you messing that up? But once you get to that phase, even when I got to that phase, like I always feel like 0 to 1 million is like a lot of hustle and muscle. And but then when you start bringing on people, you got to invest in talent, track every dollar. And then it hurts. You might onboard somebody and you lose so much money. Like you got to risk and gamble, and not in a mean way, but employees won't. They kind of be like, well, that's your money. It's like, no, this is the company's money. I have to protect this and invest. And a lot of times they don't see the full, transparency of how hard it is. The 12-hour shifts. Like yesterday I was talking to somebody and they're like, oh, you only work 7 to 4, and I was like, yeah, I mean just today, but it's nonstop, put the kids down, work, addressing stuff, but it's kind of 24/7 because people are trying to take you out. It's not, it is ugly out there, and I'm sure in your field, I don't know your field. Is it like, vicious? Are people coming after each other, making fun of each other? Like what, is it competitive?
I mean, it's definitely extremely competitive. I mean, everybody talks about AI. You know what I mean? Like AI is part of scaling, automation is part of scaling. I do want to hit on one of the things you said. I would actually make an adjustment to my earlier statement. I think the hardest thing personally for me is how lonely the entrepreneurship feeling can be sometimes. Because like you said, your team supports you, they care about you, they care for you, they're there for you, but even if you have that perfect setup, there's still some components that they just don't see, and it's not your place to be like, well, look at what I'm doing, because you're the one that took the leap and decided to do it. It's not their responsibility, it's not their fault you did that. They play a crucial role in it, but like there's certain components of it that are super like lonely because there are not many people that relate to that. So one of the things on the flip side that I feel super grateful is meeting people like you. So I'm like, okay, I can have conversations in ways that you get that not everybody will understand, that the entrepreneur gets. But I would say that's probably arguably one of the toughest things about it is like, Alex Hormozy talks about it, is like it gets really lonely because you're shedding some of the friends you used to have because they're not where you want to be, but you're not quite at the level of the people that you want to be around. So you're kind of like on your own. So I've been super appreciative and grateful that you've been part of that. And I've kind of found that. I kind of want to build a community in our area where it's entrepreneurship, where we can come together and just whatever you're building, like whether it's a competitive field or not, like it's a lonely walk, man. Like it can get those 12, 14, 16-hour days. Sometimes you work and don't sleep and this stuff. And I think your team knows you're working hard, but sometimes they don't know it to the fullest extent, Yeah,
sometimes I show at the office like 12 o'clock. It's like, oh, you have a good morning. I'm thinking like, dude, I've been in meetings from 7 to 10 years.
Yes,
shit,
for sure.
About,
But you get in a little bit late and they're just like, oh yeah, you have midday. It's like, no, dude, I've been up since 5 o'clock in different calls, different meetings and all this stuff. And I think communication helps. At least that's one of the things I've tried to develop is like, again, they don't know what they don't know. You know what I mean? Like it's not their job to know everything. So I try to like be more communicative of like, here's what I'm doing, because I don't want them to feel like they're getting, again, it comes down to like the integrity. Like I hope my team trust and know that I'm not just sitting in there with my feet kicked up taking a nap. It's like, no, and I don't think they think that, but I think communicating to them like, here's what I've got going on, that way they know and they feel supported, has been really helpful to me early on as well. So before I get to the place, hopefully God willing, that we get to 10, 15, 20 employees, I'm building that kind of relationship and rapport now, which has been helpful.
Yeah. No, sometimes, I'll get blamed for stuff I didn't initiate, didn't even know what was going on. and then it started, and I'm like thinking in my mind, like, why am I being blamed for this? But, hey, I'll take full accountability. This is what we got to do, But, a lot of people think, especially with AI, I see sometimes on the internet, like, just build this chat and manage these and hire people overseas. And it's like, whoa. You can't delegate sometimes what you don't know, So even in my business, I try to, like this year I have a 65-page manual for the entire company, and then I'm working on the next 3 years,
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited. It's cool. I got to show you. And, and again, that's just some shit on paper, but making it happen. You've probably done that. I mean, there's times like you couldn't have told me like I wasn't going to pull a project off. I spent thousands with lawyers and accountants and advice, and then just get smacked in my face. And I'm like, damn it, I thought this was going to be it. Or like you work on sales deals, and, I've been there, especially when I'm doing deals, you land the deal and then it, they don't even have money to do it, or they don't pay you, or, you just get smacked in the face,
Yeah, lots of learnings around that early on for sure.
Yeah, man, there's times I started my business and, payroll might be $60,000 and like all insurance companies might have held money, and I'm like, whoa, what are we doing here? But I have to think about every family member that's involved and eat the bullet and take a loan for this much and pay back $20,000 in interest. It's making stuff up, but they won't see that, and it's not their job. They don't have equity in the company or understand that. And in my field, I work with a lot of social workers, so sometimes they're in lofty land where, money just grows on trees, and the government just gives me a big bag of money on my way to work, so it's like you got to foster that. And especially, being my field, we deal with people, which is more important than profits. But, it's just me and my wife. We have no investors. We have no, I think I'm like one of the only ones. I'm one of the only ones that doesn't, like, in my mind, push a lot of medications and stuff like that, and optimize for the most stuff. But, and going back to that, even getting advice from people, I've noticed this, like my wife's real good, and trust women, like trust your wife, the gut instinct. I've learned that women are typically...
their intuition.
Yeah, that's the word, more smarter. But, anytime it's like, that's a bad deal, kind of go, because some people... you might be a really good person, have good intentions, but they're just seeking information to tear you down, and try to do that. So, sometimes I see like they don't have the best interest in mind. Like I've received calls from people and I'm like, well, that's kind of weird, and they want to know what you're doing, and, and I'm like, man, but they're trying to tear you down. And normally I'm pretty positive, like I'm trying to build people's life. I've got them to the most successful point they ever had, the most salary, but then they get envy and, try to tear you down. So as you grow, like protecting yourself and your family is very important, and staying away, because it does suck. You see successful entrepreneur, you could have somebody, I don't know, selling toilet paper or something. People are tearing them down, conspiracy theories, and you're like, that's weird, I've even seen other entrepreneurs that used to be the good face, and then they just get more successful, and they're like, well, you see stuff. Well, if they could give everybody $100 and be successful. It's like, they're worth that much. You know, if you're such a good person, go sell all your shit and give it to the homeless people. You know, but you know, never take too much success. I mean, credit for your success in certain areas, but also own everything else. You know, because people shouldn't be able to tear you down. You know, and one thing I think is hard is like learning the sales, the marketing. You know, doing all that stuff, staying alive. What's been the hardest part keeping everything afloat with your company?
I would say early on, you're wearing all of the hats. I'm sure, as you're aware. I mean, you've got 17 different hats you're wearing. You're the finance person. You're the fulfillment. So like your sales, you're bringing people in, but then you're also fulfilling on that. So when we first started, it was just me, and doing what we did, and then pretty quickly, it then became okay, cool. I could do all of this and keep a little bit more money, or this is the moment where I can start to bring people on, develop that, and then be able to. So I think that's one of the things that has been important early on, is just kind of like recognizing which hats I should keep, because I'm the person that can drive this, or I have the most leverage in this, and what can be developed by somebody else or empowered by somebody else.
Yeah.
And so I think right now the biggest challenge is just as we're growing, the cool thing is like there's a lot of friction points of having to wear all these different hats, but I'm protecting my team as much as possible so that they're not wearing like 17 different hats. Yeah. And then as we can, we're bringing people on. So this month we're hoping to bring on at least an intern to help us out with more of the front-facing social media side of things, which is sweet, because I recognize that I'm spending a lot of that time on that, and it's not really me doing it, is not adding value to the business. And it, in fact, is probably taken away from somebody who's out in our area that could be much better than I am at it, and could add value not only to us as a company, but to all of our clients. Yeah. And I think that's my personal goal is with our clients is when we have the ability to, we want to bring more people on and add even more value to our clients. And so I'm excited about that, because I know in Toledo there's not many areas to do what we're doing, and you have to kind of move to like different areas of the world to be able to do the types of stuff we're doing, or work remote for companies. So that's one thing I like about our company, is it's all internal. We don't outsource stuff across seas. We do it all in-house. So it's been cool, but that's the question you asked is like what's challenging. That's it, is like figuring out, okay, what hat should I keep, because I add a lot of value in this way, but what hat should I bring somebody else on? And so it's learning, growing, and I'm sure I'm going to mess it up in some cases, but of course, I hope I do fail fast and learn from that, recover and make adjustments. And now I've got a pretty good team behind me, so they'll help me if I fall.
Yeah, and put your ego to the side, because you want to, just admit, like, sure, I screwed up, that's it, know, because most people are scared to admit defeat, and as we scale, as you scale and stuff, it helps you grow faster, because you can't do everything, and like right now I'm trying to systematize every department to make everything, because in the beginning, you're all over the place, everybody's wearing different hats, but then people feel revengeful sometimes, and culture change. And I started here and I started there, so that's sweet. Where do you see your company going, like in like a couple of years?
Yeah, in a couple of years, what we'd like to do is have build out our studio a little bit more, so that we have more places. I mean, one of my goals for Toledo is to make what we're doing right now more accessible to people, whether they have large budgets and we can build them custom studios, or they just want to experiment and try to get themselves out there with a friend or a couple friends. And so we want to have studios, which you and I have talked about before, where people can come in, customize it however they would like to, and not have to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars, but be able to step up the ladder as they go, and have the ability that I used to dream about, of like, man, I have to remind myself, like, all these cameras we have, I remember getting like a camera that was like a fraction of the cost, and I felt like I was on top of the world, because it was such a big expense, and so it stopped us from doing stuff. So in a couple of years, I'd love to have a studio outfitted for different people to be able to do that. We have some ambitions of what we'd like to do in terms of education around our field. We've got some brands that we're bringing back to light, this year, and we're excited about it. And we also, I've told you about this, I've got a goal to kind of do what Barstool has done. at a big level, they've done it really well. I want to do it for the Toledo area. So basically be able to partner with people that maybe have like a really good idea and have the energy and the passion to do it, but they don't have the back end. Be able to partner with them and help build a platform with them. And so we got some cool things coming. You know what I mean?
No, you probably got some people like, here, I'll give you $100, make this viral video, and this and perfect. And, it's like, man, this camera's 15 grand. What are you talking about? So always know your worth, always know your price, because the people that kind of come at you and try to slash you and stuff, sometimes, they tend not to be the best person to work with. Who is the business that you're trying to work with, the best customer, and how would somebody get your services if they were interested in growing their business?
Sure. So right now, this year we're really focused on helping owners of companies build their personal brands, because people buy from people, right? Yep. You know what I mean? If I asked you who's the CEO of Panera, would you be able to tell me?
Not offhand.
No. No, you're good. What about Tesla?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
He does all his marketing. Elon does all his marketing.
Well, so it's his personal brand. It's based on that, right? And then Apple.
Shit, they don't advertise and stuff?
Well, they advertise too, but if you look at Tesla versus Elon Musk, who has more influence socially? And that's just one example. I mean, you could pick out a whole bunch. I think, Apple was a really good, Bezos, Amazon. So when we talk about personal brand, like, it's important to do both. It's important to have your company doing marketing, but ultimately people buy from people that they resonate with and that stand for something and stand against something. And so a lot of times what we run into, the problem that we help people solve, is that they either don't have the time to do it, they don't know where to start, and they don't want to take the time and the investment to hire somebody internally, just to have to train them on everything and then potentially go. And so that's really kind of where we fit in nicely, is helping kind of establish that routine and consistency online. And so our ideal clients would be somebody that owns a business that's trying to build their company and build their personal brand, and we'll partner with them, kind of like what we do with you. And then in terms of what was your other question?
How does businesses get a hold of you?
Get a hold of us?
How can they get a chance to work with you?
Yeah, so you can send me an email directly, josh@aswescale.com. You could go to our website. You can access our services there. If you're just trying to kind of get your feet wet, so we want to serve the clientele at that level, but we also want to be like really grounded with individuals. So if you want to start a podcast, we do have studio space, the one we're using right now, and so if you want to use that, you can just go to our website and you can reach out, and we have options kind of for both tiers, which is cool.
Oh, that's awesome. So, one last thing, I know the cameras are on, but imagine it's your last video. You're speaking to little Josh and, millions of kids with ADHD. What would be your message to them?
I would say, if I was talking to younger Josh, to trust your instinct. There have been at least 2 significant moments in my life where I doubted myself, and not necessarily doubted myself, but I was too nervous or too scared to do something. And if I would have, and I don't like to think this way, but I don't want somebody to potentially miss out on an opportunity. You will have people that doubt you, and it's sometimes out of malice, sometimes it's because they don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the internet is still, not anymore, but for us, when we were growing up, was a new thing. So, like, we're figuring out stuff, like, now, like, you can play video games and make millions of dollars.
Crazy.
Our parents would not have let us play video games. You know what I mean? Like, it's like a career, that's not a thing. And so if you have a gut feeling that something is, like, you recognize something that it is meaningful to you and that could change your life, take that bet on yourself.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Anybody watching Beyond the Label podcast, please download on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and subscribe. Or you want to be a guest on the show, leave a comment. We would love to share just impactful stories. We're trying to change the way we look at people in society, but you got to do it. You got to stand up and advocate. Only us can change the system.